Chapter 1. The Desert That Remembered. The year was 1907, and the Mojave Desert stretched out like an ocean of rusted gold, shimmering under an unforgiving sun. Most travelers who crossed it left nothing behind but footprints, swallowed by wind. But on a particularly blistering August afternoon, a prospector named Elias Vance stumbled upon something that refused to be forgotten. Elias was not a famous man. He was not even a particularly successful one. A son of Ohio farmers, he had drifted west after reading dime novel fantasies about untapped riches under the desert floor. The closest he had come to riches was a handful of turquoise flakes he sold to a jeweler, who later told him they were worthless. But on that day, Elias kicked loose an object half buried in the sand, something that glinted unnaturally, almost accusingly, catching the sun like the eye of a living creature. He bent down, expecting just another piece of broken glass. It was not glass. Elias brushed more sand away. A shape emerged, then markings, then more. Within minutes, he uncovered a perfectly preserved cylinder, metallic, seamless, like nothing forged in the 19th or 20th century. Inscribed along its length, in a language he could not identify, were symbols arranged with geometric precision. And then he saw the year etched faintly near the base. 1524. Elias blinked, wiped his forehead, looked again. A date older than the oldest European settlements west of the Mississippi. Impossible. Chapter 2. The Smithsonian Men. 2 months later, the object lay under lamplight in a quiet room at the Smithsonian Institution in Washington, D.C. Elias had been flown across the country, his first time in a railcar's sleeping berth, his first time seeing the Potomac, his first time speaking to government men wearing tailored suits that made him feel transparent. At the center of the room stood Dr. Nathaniel Cyrus Harding, one of the most respected archaeologists in the United States, and a man famous for tearing down more myths than he built. Harding rotated the cylinder slowly. "No seams," he murmured. "Not even under the microscope." He turned to Elias. "And you found it, simply lying in the sand." "Stuck in the ground like it'd been waiting for me." "Sir, is it real?" Harding didn't answer. Instead, he motioned for another man to step forward. Josephine Alder, a linguist with the U.S. Geological Survey, unusually young for her position and already infamous for her ability to reconstruct languages from a single inscription. She traced the carvings with her gloved hand. "This is not anything native to the Americas," she said slowly. "Actually, it's not similar to anything I've seen at all." "Forgery?" Harding asked. "No," Josephine said. "Whoever carved these symbols had far more refined tools than anything available in 1524. The room fell silent. Elias cleared his throat. "What's inside it?" Harding exhaled. "We don't know how to open it." Chapter 3. The First Crack. Word of the object, later called the Mojave Cylinder, spread quietly among select scientific circles. Harding insisted on secrecy, fearing public ridicule. The Smithsonian Board approved a closed investigation. Only 6 people were granted clearance. In December 1907, Josephine managed to identify 3 repeating symbols on the cylinder. They formed a pattern she believed indicated a locking mechanism, something conceptual rather than mechanical. A week later, she touched the surface in a specific sequence. The cylinder shuddered. A faint hairline crack appeared, running perfectly vertical. Elias, who had been invited back as the original discoverer, stepped backwards instinctively. "Don't touch it," Harding warned. The crack widened with a soft hiss, as if exhaling after centuries of silence. Inside lay a scroll, not parchment, not papyrus, something far thinner, like woven plant fiber, processed far beyond anything known to pre-Columbian cultures. Josephine lifted it carefully. The material did not crumble. It did not age. It felt new. Harding leaned in to read. The first line froze him. "To the people who will inherit the sun's last land." Josephine whispered, "This isn't a hoax." Elias whispered, "Then what is it?" Harding faced him. "History is about to become very inconvenient." Chapter 4. A Message Across Centuries. The scroll was written in a hybrid language, part Latin, part an unfamiliar syntax that Josephine suspected connected to 16th century Portuguese nautical slang. At times, it veered into something almost modern. Weeks turned into months. Josephine translated line by line until the narrative gained shape, and what it described defied every known historical record. According to the scroll, a Portuguese explorer named Caspar Corte Real, long presumed dead after vanishing during an expedition to the North Atlantic, had not perished at sea. His crew, blown wildly off course, had drifted south, far south, around Florida, across the Gulf, through storms, eventually wrecking near what would one day become Southern California. The scroll claimed Corte Real survived. Not only survived, but encountered a civilization in the West more advanced than any indigenous group known to history. A civilization that documented celestial events with mathematical accuracy exceeding that of contemporary Europe. One that predicted the supernova of 1572. One that tracked solar cycles with precision matching modern astrophysics. One that believed the desert was the skin of the sky, where messages should be hidden for future peoples, the inheritors of the last land touched by the setting sun. Harding frowned over the translation. "There is no archaeological record of any such civilization." Josephine replied, "Maybe because they didn't leave one." "Impossible," Harding said flatly. Elias muttered, "Not anymore." The deeper they read, the more troubling the content became. Pages described the civilization's sudden disappearance, a vanishing chosen, not suffered, a ritual evacuation, a migration into places where day cannot betray them. The final line chilled everyone. "To the new guardians of this land, the next eclipse will reveal what you must seek." The next eclipse was scheduled for January 3rd, 1908, 2 weeks away. Chapter 5. The Eclipse. Harding secured a field team to return to the Mojave site. Elias insisted on going. Harding reluctantly agreed. On the morning of the eclipse, the desert was colder than Washington had been. The team set up instruments around the discovery site. At 9:16 a.m., the sun began to dim. At 9:19, Josephine shouted, "Look!" Patterns emerged across the desert floor. Dark lines, impossible to see before the eclipse's shadow swept over the sand. A geometric grid, perfectly aligned, miles in diameter. Harding whispered, "My God, it was here the whole time." The desert was a map pointing toward a ridge 10 miles north. At the center of the ridge stood a monolith. Not Native American, not Spanish, not geological. Machined, smoothed, metallic. Elias approached it cautiously. "Do you see that?" he asked. The monolith bore the same symbols as the cylinder. When the last sliver of sun disappeared behind the moon, the monolith vibrated subtly like a tuning fork struck by invisible hands. A panel slid open. Inside was another scroll, and something else. A star map, etched into a material no one could identify. Josephine gasped. "These coordinates, they're not of anything on Earth." Elias swallowed hard. "So who the hell left this behind?" Harding answered quietly. "Someone who wanted to be found, but not until we were ready." Chapter 6. Washington Panics. Back in D.C., the reaction to the second set of artifacts divided the institution. Some argued they were too dangerous to reveal. Others insisted they represented the greatest archaeological discovery in North American history. Rumors leaked. Newspapers caught wind. On February 17, 1908, the Washington Herald published a small, sensational article. "Strange metal object found in West, government silent." The Smithsonian Board grew nervous. Congress began asking questions. Harding was pressured to produce a formal explanation, but he couldn't, because the second scroll described something terrifying, a prediction. It stated that those who come later would rediscover a forgotten site deeper in the desert, one containing knowledge capable of moving the sky itself. It warned that such knowledge had once destroyed an entire civilization. The only date referenced was 1908, the year of the Great Fireball. Josephine's hand trembled as she read it. "That can't mean what I think it means." Harding nodded grimly. A giant explosion was recorded in Siberia that same year, the Tunguska event, June 30th, 1908. If the scroll was genuinely centuries old, it had predicted Tunguska. Chapter 7. The Forbidden Site. Harding requested immediate funding for a full excavation of the Ridge region. The approval came quickly. Congress wanted answers before the press did. The dig began in spring 1908, and what they uncovered changed American archaeology forever. Beneath the ridge was a vast underground complex, tunnels carved with precision tools, walls lined with metallic panels that did not rust under exposure. Rooms appeared calibrated to star positions. One chamber contained a perfectly spherical object suspended by invisible force. Another chamber held remnants of plant species unknown to Western botanists. The final chamber contained an incomplete machine, part mechanical, part organic in design, unlike anything from known human history. Josephine silently whispered the words from the scroll. Knowledge capable of moving the sky. Harding stared at the machine. This wasn't built by any civilization known to anthropology. Elias stepped closer. "You think Corte Real actually met these people?" Harding replied, "I think he was terrified by them." But the deepest shock came when Josephine found an inscription on the chamber wall. A date, 1909. A date in the future. Beneath it, "We will return." Chapter 8. The Order of Secrecy. President Theodore Roosevelt was briefed privately. His response was immediate: lock it away. An executive directive classified the entire Mojave discovery under national security, decades before the concept formally existed. Excavated artifacts were quietly transferred to a military facility later known as Fort Adelphi in Maryland. The Smithsonian issued a public statement claiming the cylinder had been a misidentified Spanish artifact of little historical significance. Harding resigned. Josephine vanished into government work she never spoke about again. Elias was offered money to forget everything. He didn't take it. But history buried the truth anyway. because sometimes the most unbelievable stories are the ones most easily erased. Chapter 9. The Return of the Sun's Children. For over a century, the Mojave site remained sealed. But every 25 years, under moonless desert nights, strange lights were reported near the ridge. Rangers called them heat illusions. Locals whispered about sky people. In 1947, 2 months before the Roswell incident, a classified Air Force document referenced unusual electromagnetic signatures detected at the ridge, matching those recorded during the Tunguska blast. In 1972, geologists drilling nearby discovered subsurface metal identical to the monolith alloy, metals still not reproducible today. In 1998, a researcher claimed to have decoded the star map recovered in 1907. It pointed not to any known star system, but toward a region of the sky empty to the naked eye, until NASA infrared mapping revealed faint traces of megastructures. The media never heard about it, because every time something resurfaced, someone buried it again. But the scroll's prophecy remains. We will return. And the date on the chamber wall, 1909, never explained itself. Some historians believe it referred not to a year, but to a cycle, one reaching completion in the early 21st century. What returns in such cycles? Civilizations? Visitors? Warnings? Or perhaps simply the truth, a truth waiting patiently beneath the desert, watching the inheritors of the last land touched by the setting sun, watching America grow, fight, fall, rise, waiting for the moment when someone finally digs deep enough not to turn away.